Attendu que le Canada est fondé sur des principes qui reconnaissent la suprématie de Dieu et la primauté du droit, prenons un moment de réflexion personnelle. Whereas Canada is founded upon principles that recognize the supremacy of God and the rule of law, let us take a moment of personal reflection. Merci beaucoup tout le monde. Thank you everyone. Item 4, additions, deletion, or amendments. We have a few items to add. We have under section 18, under item 1, Councillor Saucier for the Irish tea. Item 2 under 18, under Councillor Saucier for TR Léger opening. Under 18, number 3, we have Conseil Brisson pour la clinique de Saint. And under item 20, closed session, proposed disposition of land in Embrun. Anything else? Councillor Tarnowski?
If I can add under 17, just some questions pertaining to the special meeting for capital charges that we're having on Thursday.
18?
18, my bad, sorry.
Councillor Tarnowski? In regards to the meeting on Thursday. Okay, anything else, members of council? No? So move on to item 5, adopting the agenda. Motion to approve the agenda as modified. Need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Conseiller Brisson, seconded by Councillor Tarnowski. All those in favor? All those opposed? Carried. Item 6, disclosure of pecuniary interest. Councillor Saucier?
I don't feel I have an interest, but I just wanted to make sure I verbally state that I am on well and septic.
Okay, thank you. Item 7, adoption of minutes, the regular council minutes of February 19th, 2019. Motion to approve the following minutes as presented. Need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Saucier, seconded by Conseiller Lorraine. Question, comments? None. All those in favor? All those opposed? Carried. Item 8, presentations. Item A, general overview of SNC's programs and services by Mr. John Mesman, Team Lead Communication. Mr. Mesman, welcome.
Bonsoir, merci, Monsieur le maire et les membres de conseil pour l'invitation de vous joindre ce soir. As introduced, my name is John Mesman. I work at South Nation Conservation. As most of you will recall, hopefully you've received what we like to call our municipal councillor orientation packages. So these are packages we like to prepare pretty much every 4 years or after a new election cycle to share with our councillors and our members throughout the region some information on some of the programs and services that we offer. So of course, those packages aren't all inclusive, but they hope to at least provide an update and an overview on some of the work that we do. For the most part, most of you are familiar faces, so I'm sure my presentation type will be brief, but if at any time you do have questions, now or later, you're always encouraged to reach out to my office or anyone that works at the Conservation Authority. SNC, as you know, is a conservation authority. We work on a watershed scale. So looking at the map alone, most people will be familiar with this. We work for 16 different member municipalities with a watershed that's extremely large and a population that's diverse. We're funded, as you know, through both municipal levy and through funding that's secured through donations and fundraise as well. So that funding composition is included in your orientation packages, but it's basically around 50-50. So 50% of our revenue is generated by our member municipalities, and the rest is self-generated. So whether it be programs or services that are delivered on behalf of people like yourselves or other companies or corporations, that makes up our budget. Inside those packages, you'll see different products. You'll see things like our annual reports. You'll see things like our watershed report cards and our municipal work plans. These documents we prepare annually. Once they're done, we send them to you right away. And if at any time you have questions, we encourage you to reach out. What you'll mostly be familiar seeing is our memos to council that generally will be included in your agenda packages throughout the year. These will vary. Sometimes they're project focused, sometimes they're program based, and they serve to give you updates on some of the work that we're doing in your municipality. If at any time you have questions on anything at all, just let us know and we can issue a memo to staff and to council as well. Our programs, work to foster what we call landowner stewardship. So we provide a number of programs that we hope help people do good environmental stewardship work on their properties. Some of these programs will include tree planting, woodlot advisory service, our clean water program, recently our ash tree replacement program for the city of Ottawa. Through some new funding and an update from our Forest Conservation Initiative, we've also enhanced our tree planting program to include new areas as well. Most of you will be familiar with planting large planting projects of 1,000 trees or more, where we provide subsidies. This year, as a result of the work that we've done, we're providing subsidies for trees that are planted along water courses and farm fields as well. So some program enhancements in that area. The Woodlot Advisory Service is delivered on behalf of the United Counties. That service, I think last year we delivered about $2,000 in grants in your municipality. We visited one woodlot owner, and we planted, I think, about 650 trees from over-the-counter services, so not the large tree planting projects that we do. To protect people and property and support sustainable development, we do a number of things. Some of those things are provincially legislated through the Conservation Authorities Act, so they mostly pertain to natural hazards, so protection of areas like floodplains or unstable slopes, landslide, provincially significant wetlands, those types of things. Those we do in conjunction with your planning department. We work closely with the municipality to do some key environmental reviews on planning applications. We also deliver the Drinking Water Source Protection Program and the provincial flood forecasting and warning and low water response programs as well on behalf of the province. And on behalf of our municipalities, 18 in our area, we also deliver Part 8 of the Ontario Building Code, and that's sewage systems. So on your behalf, we deliver and do inspections for septic in your municipality. And that alone is one of the very good examples of a municipally supported program that's offered at cost and through a fee service that we offer. And of course, we maintain about 7 different water control structures throughout the region. Specifically in your area, you have the Russell Weir. That's maintained by the Conservation Authority. Can everyone hear me? Yeah. I'm okay?
Yeah, all good.
In terms of our natural spaces, we manage about 20,000 acres of community forests throughout our jurisdiction. In your municipality alone, that includes a large parcel of land. Specifically, we also own and operate 2 day-use parks. That would be Tweed Conservation Area and W.E. Burton Conservation Area. Last year, Tweed received about 21,500 visitors to the park throughout the year, and W.E. Burton 16,090 visitors throughout the year. Of our 14 day-use parks that we own and we maintain for regular visitation, those are our highest visitation parks. So more people go to the parks in your municipality than anywhere else in our jurisdiction, including our parks in Ottawa. So that's something I think to be proud of. I think that's an excellent metric to report on and to be aware of. Not only are people in your municipality enjoying these conservation areas, but people outside the municipality as well. So it's really great to hear that it's received great use. We also deliver some municipally supported park services as well. We operate your Emperor boat launch, and in the winter we groom the Russell Recreation Trail on your behalf, which I think people like for the most part. Yes. They still like it, yeah. Our scientific monitoring and reporting programs are used to guide both our stewardship decisions. So when we do habitat restoration projects and repair work along our watercourses, this monitoring helps inform those projects. It's also used in our planning and environmental reviews division. So we want to make sure that we're using accurate data, on the ground data, to support the decision making that we do. Our monitoring cycle goes on a 5-year cycle. So every year our monitoring takes place in a new sub-watershed in our region, and it works around the landscape pretty much. Once a year we move somewhere new, and in that previous year we report on what's going on. And we do that through our watershed report cards. So those are a snapshot in time, updated every 5 years. And that data is used, of course, all the time. I think there's a few projects going on in Russell right now in terms of habitat stewardship and restoration work. The biggest one is actually planned to be taking place in Tweed. If any of you have visited Tweed in the summer, you'll notice near one of the bridges that we replaced this year, there's a long area that's basically has this black cloth along near the path. So that's actually a failed erosion project where the river has eroded away the path. And so this year we've applied for some funding, hopefully in the amount of $50,000 from private donations to help repair that work. So we're going to be building up that shoreline in Tweed to make sure that that trail isn't actually in the waterbeds. That's basically the biggest park/stewardship project around this year. Finally, of course, we do lots of work in the community to support empowering our communities and youth. We offer a variety of environmental education programs. Specifically, last year we were here doing our Stream of Dreams program in Russell. So this is a great school program that takes place throughout the whole school. Forest cover is always a conversation that goes on here throughout the watershed and throughout the world. It's something that we work hard to report on. It's something that we work hard to develop programs around, not just to support the environment in our forests, but also our communities. So we try and work very closely with our member municipalities to develop things that make sense on the ground for them. You'll recall over the last 2 years that we've worked with a number of working groups to talk about forest cover, to talk about how to engage our communities in that discussion, and things that we, the Conservation Authority, can do and the municipality can do together to help improve and conserve some of our forests. So recently, last year, we published a report that includes some of those recommendations that have been approved by our board and our committees, and they're things that both the municipality and the Conservation Authority are working on. Some things include the new tree planting subsidy I mentioned earlier, are doing some new woodlot visits to tree planting sites. Municipalities specifically, you've worked on creating new policies to protect urban or tree canopy cover and natural vegetation. And coming up next, we're working with all of our municipalities to do what we're going to call community-free tree days, where we're going to be giving away tree seedlings for free to help encourage and help people talk and understand the importance of forest cover. We have a date, I think it's tentatively set later in April, but of course you'll receive more information as that becomes available. And I mean, with that's what I think is a high-level summary. I don't know how fast or slow I went or how engaging it was, but if you guys have questions, Mayor, of course, I'm happy to answer them.
Perfect. Thank you very much, John. A lot of information. It's nice to see it ahead of time. That way it gives the council an opportunity to read up and question if there is. I'm not sure if members of council have any questions at this time. Councillor Sosi?
Yeah, so it's just really, well, I have a comment and a question. So it's important for reinforcing the need to make measures to protect the forest and tree canopy, and of course we're adopting a tree canopy policy. And I know you have the free woodlot advisory, and also you're looking for land for planting trees, and it has to be a minimum of 5 acres. Is that correct?
So yes, so that's probably two things will answer that question. One, we did receive some federal money this year in the amount of about $100,000 to create some tree buffer demonstration sites for farms. So we are looking for agricultural producers on private land to help plant some new tree buffers to showcase and to be used for future applications to our Green Water Program or tree planting program. So right now we're looking for 4 demonstration sites to build sites just like that. And then in addition, of course, at any time, if somebody has either 10 acres for a woodlot visit or as low as 1 acre to plant trees, we always encourage people to talk to us about that.
Okay. And what about roadside planting? Is there any plans on that?
So we do roadside tree planting on behalf of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry, so that's a program that we have long-standing with them. And it is something that we have shared with the county and all of our municipalities as a consideration to help plant trees along roadsides. I'm sure you're aware of the benefits of those, but yes.
For drifting and what have you.
Yes.
And can you just remind me also on the percentage of the tree coverage in our township? Because I know the recommendation is minimum 30%. I think we're sitting around 12.
Yeah, so that would be a stat from 2014. There was about 12% canopy cover in Russell municipality. When we talk about tree cover guidelines, there's lots of things to consider, and we like to work on a watershed scale to make sure we're doing integrated watershed management. So when we look at a watershed, we want to make sure that we at least have 30% forest cover. But there are other metrics that are important, like riparian cover, wind breaks, those sort of things, and they're valuable as well. In a township like Russell, where a large portion of the town is either currently urbanized or has plans to be urbanized, there are additional considerations for that. So 30% might not always be the best threshold, but it is something to strive for. So it is low, but you have to keep in mind urban versus non-urban and where your trees are. So especially along the Castor River and their tributaries leading to Bear Brook, those are some targets for us and for you guys as well to look at.
Okay, thanks, John.
You're welcome.
I think another point to point out is that we had a heritage study recently that was done, and one of the items that was presented in the heritage study was the amount of tree coverage we actually had in the village core.
Mm-hmm.
So as a member of the board, I've asked that SNC look at possibly giving us information as to what our actually tree coverage is inside the boundaries where the majority of the population lives. So, you know, it's hard to have forest and agricultural land because we know outside of our village boundaries it's mostly agricultural land. So that I'm looking forward to SNC working and presenting something at a later date.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing as well is to remember that after the city of Ottawa, Russell Township is one of the biggest contributors financially to SNC. We give, I believe approximately $130,000 was the levy this year for the township. So, you know, we're plus the funding we have in our own budget, so we're well into $150,000 this year for tree coverage and for the environment. So I think that's a feather in our caps.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
Councillor Associate?
I just wanted to ask Madame Tremblay, was it not the community improvement plan, like the gentleman that did the survey, wasn't he saying that we didn't have enough trees in the villages because the eye was drawn to the wires, and that it wasn't, that he felt like we needed more in the village core?
I don't have my mic, but the streetscape master plan didn't look at the percentage compared to the heritage, or did compare with the percentage of what we had in before.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the streetscape didn't really, so the streetscape never mentioned any percentage of the tree coverage that we had into the urban sector of Alberta and Russell.
Not the percent, I just remember him stating that when you look down the line, that you don't see, your eyes are drawn to wires because there's no trees to break the,
I don't recall
No?
that statement,
Oh.
sorry.
I think if we had a wish list, we'd love to see the wires buried, but I'm not sure we're going to go in that direction. But obviously, as you mentioned, there's always improvements. We can always look to improve the situation, but we also have to be realistic of what situation we are in.
And as you mentioned, Mayor, we look forward to working on taking a look at that natural heritage study and seeing what we can do to make some suggestions for you.
Perfect, thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? No? Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thanks so much, everyone. Appreciate that.
We'll move on to the next item. Item 9, delegations, petitions. We have none. Item 10, consent items. Motion that all items listed under consent items be received as presented. Item A, minutes of the Russell Historical Society of January 14, 2019. Need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Donosky, seconded by Conseiller Buisson. All those in favor? All those opposed? Carried. We now move on to section 11, reports from departments and council committees. Item A, 2018 Audit Service Plan from BDO, FS 2019, that council receives the 2018 Audit Service Plan from BDO dated March 4th, 2019. Monsieur Leduc, Monsieur Godin.
Merci, Monsieur Maire. Bonsoir, Chairman du Conseil. So it's that time of year. We're currently undergoing our financial year end for year 2018. Puis, comme vous savez, l'année passée, on a donné un contre-service de 3 ans à BDO pour effectuer les audits financiers de la municipalité ainsi que pour nous aider à préparer les états financiers. Donc, il me fait plaisir de souhaiter la bienvenue à Mme Annick Blanchard de BDO, associée chez BDO, qui sera chargée de notre dossier. Donc, sur ce, je vais lui céder la parole, puis Mme Blanchard va nous résumer un petit peu le plan d'audit pour cette année.
Bonsoir, Madame Blanchard.
Merci. So what I'll do, I'll do it in French, but you do have material in French and English, and if you have questions in English, feel free to stop me. I'll go pretty briefly, assuming you've read. If you have questions, again, you can stop me. So with your team, that's page 3 of your report. So you have myself, a beta partner. I have 18 years experience. I focus on NPOs and public sector. So basically what I focus on. The manager will be Richard Gascon. The senior manager will be Richard experience. And since it's our first year with this township, we have a manager that will act as a senior on site. So he will do that with juniors with her. On page 4, you have the calendar. So we've done our planning, we've reviewed the Deloitte working papers, and then we're coming back on March 25th to start the audit, and hoping to come back on May 6th to present our draft auditors, draft financial statements and draft auditors report to this council. On page 5, we summarize the significant risks. So as is we have in all audits, we have to identify what the risks are and what we'll focus on. So revenue recognition is always present. Je crois en français, fait que je vais continuer en français. Comptabilisation des produits, c'est toujours un risque significatif. Donc, on s'assure de regarder sur le journal, on s'assure que c'est comptabilisé correctement par rapport à des SAD. On envoie des confirmations externes. L'autre qui est tout le temps là, c'est les dérogations des contrôles par la direction. Donc, c'est encore, on regarde les écritures de journal, discussion avec la direction, puis c'est changer la gouvernance entre le conseil. Spécifié comme municipalité, responsabilité pour les sites contaminés. Donc, c'est une norme qui savent qu'il y a des sites qui sont pas en service. Il faut voir s'il y a un risque de contamination, puis un montant comptabilisé aux états financiers. Donc, il faut regarder ça. Comme c'est notre première année avec le canton, les seuils d'ouverture, ça serait faire du travail, comme on a mentionné, pour regarder le dossier de chez Deloitte. Donc, cette portion est déjà faite, l'estimation, les avantages sociaux futurs, donc le montant à owners aussi, qu'est-ce qu'on a comme passif de comptabiliser. Puis cette année, il y a 2 nouvelles normes avec l'ISAM par rapport aux transactions avec les parties liées, donc s'assurer que c'est comptabilisé correctement et qu'on présente correctement les états financiers. À la page 6, on parle de notre seuil de signification, donc la matérialité qu'on utilise. Nous, on prend 2% des revenus, donc c'est quand même conservateur. Ça fait, on prend les budgets. En ce moment, on est calculé sur les revenus budgétés, donc ça en est à peu près 500 000. Ceci étant dit, si on regarde dans la petite boîte, on parle de qu'est-ce qui est manifestement négligeable. Donc, pour ça, c'est 5% du seuil de signification qui ferait 25 000. Fait que si on trouve une erreur en haut de 25 000, soit qu'elle soit corrigée ou qu'elle est au sommaire des erreurs, on va le rapporter au conseil, donc de le savoir. La page 7, c'est les honoraires, donc c'est constant avec notre appel, votre appel d'offres, notre soumission qu'on a répondu, donc on reconfirme. Dans les annexes, l'annexe A, c'est vraiment la stratégie de comment on fait le scoping, l'identification des risques, etc. À l'annexe B, on a notre lettre de mission, donc signée par nous à BDO, puis aussi le directeur des finances et trésorier. À l'annexe C, donc, s'assurer d'être indépendant pour pouvoir faire une mission de vie. Donc, on confirme qu'on est indépendant du 1er janvier 2018 à maintenant. Donc, incluant au 4 mars. En fin d'année, on va juste, quand on vient présenter à la fin d'année, on va juste reconfirmer qu'il n'y a pas eu de changement à ce niveau-là. À l'annexe D, on parle des responsabilités. Donc, qu'est-ce qui est responsabilité de l'auditeur versus qu'est-ce qui est direction ou surcharge de la gouvernance. Puis, l'annexe E, c'est différentes ressources, donc publications, événements. Donc, à ce niveau-là, c'est pas juste, c'est sûr qu'il est remplissable, puis autant que ça peut être intéressant pour nous. Vous, c'est pas ça qui vous intéresse, mais on a différentes choses. Exemple, quand il y a des changements de point de vue fiscalité, personnellement, ça peut vous intéresser. Il y a tout le temps quelque chose de nouveau. Fait qu'assurez-vous de vous inscrire puis d'avoir des courriels quand on a des éléments. À la page 17, le celui du bas, je vais vous parler de fait, le nouveau rapport d'auditeur, un impact. Vous êtes habitué d'avoir 2 pages de rapport d'auditeur ou une page c'est tout petit, puis à la fin, il y a l'opinion. L'année prochaine, cette année, c'est différent. On commence par l'opinion. Fait que les 2 premiers paragraphes, ça dit l'opinion, puis après ça, on rentre en détail dans les responsabilités. Donc, c'est pas possible nous, c'est vraiment les normes qui ont fait que ça change. C'est un peu ça.
Parfait. Merci beaucoup, Madame Blanchard. Est-ce que les membres du conseil ont des questions, commentaires? C'est pas mal standard à chaque année. Monsieur Godin, quelque chose à ajouter?
Merci, M. le maire. Non, donc, je voulais juste remercier Mme Blanchard de s'avoir déplacé ce soir. We're looking forward to working with your team. Comme d'habitude, je trouve que ça va bien se passer. Puis, comme Mme Blanchard a mentionné plus tôt, on devrait se revoir le 6 mai pour la présentation des études. Merci.
Parfait. Merci beaucoup. Move on to the next item. Item B, zoning bylaw amendment, report PD 13-2019. The council receives report PD 13-2019 dated March 4, 2019, and approves the zoning amendment application submitted by Florent and Josée Bertrand to remove the holding symbol H as follows. 1, from residential 1 withholding R1H to residential 1 R1. Questions, comments, members of council? Councilor Sosi.
I was just trying to pinpoint exactly where it was, and I was having a bit of difficulty with the map. So can anybody clarify?
Yeah, it's on Limoges Road on the Russell side. Yeah, Madame Tremblay, je sais pas si tu peux donner un petit peu plus d'informations.
Maybe if you go to page 5 of the report, there's a map.
Yeah,
showing-
I
And it's
saw
the
that.
one identified in yellow, where it says R1, and it's like south of Savage on the other side.
Oh, okay, okay. I don't know where that is. Right,
Okay. Any other questions or comments? No, quelque chose d'autre à ajouter, Madame Tremblay? No? We'll move on. Item C, ice rental surcharge 6.25%, report FS 09-2019. The council receives report FS 09-2019 dated March 4, 2019, and adopts the following resolution. All revenues collected from the 6.25% surcharge on ice rental fees as adopted with the 2019 budget will be automatically allocated to a new reserve called Recreation Complex Fund. All funds accumulated in this reserve, along with the appropriate portion of interest revenues calculated yearly, are to be kept in the reserve and used for the eventual replacement of the township's 2 ice pads. Questions, comments, members of council? Councilor Lorette.
One of the questions that has been asked on multiple occasions from the people I've been speaking to is, what's the timeline? Right? We're holding these funds, are the people that are paying for these funds today, are they gonna sit there for 20 years and not be used? So they're okay with the fees being increased, and I say okay very loosely, but they've accepted the fact that there's gonna be an increase and why we're doing it, but they wanna know what kind of time frame are we talking about. I know we had a discussion during the budget session and whatnot, but I really think that when we set up this reserve, we have to be able to tell people when we're looking to put this in.
So I believe at this point in time, council hasn't given a direction as to a time frame. We've given direction to the administration to move forward with the hiring of a consultant this year to bring back what the cost of different projects are, so we can start having those discussions as to what the layout of the future complex could be. And after that's done, obviously give it to our finance administration team so they can bring back options as to how we fund it. how we actually go ahead with the project. The only comment I could make is if we had some kind of fund like this 20 years ago, we'd probably be in a lot better position today to actually be building that complex. So I don't think, are the people who are gonna be putting in now, taking advantages of, whenever this costs, I can't tell you at this point in time. That'll be a discussion that council will have to have and approve at that point in time. But I think that it's better to create a fund now and actually put funds aside for the complex, whether it's 2 years, 4 years, 8, 10, 12, we don't know at this point in time. But I think this year, council will be looking to give direction to council on how we proceed at that point in time. Councillor Tarnowski?
Am I wrong in remembering Mr. Godin presented a plan, and there was there were timelines with years depending on where we went and how much we would have, like in terms of starting the process. I felt pretty comfortable that we had a timeline established, maybe not direct, but there were some options there.
Yeah, I believe Monsieur Godin, if I remember well, there was a chart that presented if we invested so much, it would result in so much. Correct?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So that's correct. We did present that chart, but I think Councilor Tarnowski might also be referring to when we presented our debt capacity and potential future debts. What we use for timelines in that practice was basically based on master plans or based on DCs and stuff like that. Currently, for the rec complex, it's in our development charges study, and it's been identified for 2023. That doesn't mean we're committed to that date, but that's how it was identified when we did the DC study exercise.
Want to say that, eh?
And when we say 2023 as in that document, and that is built by 2023, or is that shovel in the ground in 2023? Because there's a huge difference. Like, is that when we're gonna start repaying the loan, which you mean built to me?
Monsieur Godin?
I mean, it's hard. I don't think the DC study goes specifically to say it's shovel in the ground or it's built. It's technically the DC's estimating an expenditure of $22 million in 2023. So I guess based on that, I would say that it could be shoveled to the ground, because as soon as it's shoveled in the ground, we start accumulating costs. But obviously, those costs might take over a period of a year or two to actually do construction, or 3 years.
And I think that realistically at this point in time, from what we've seen so far, 22 million is not exactly the high end of a project. That's a very low end compared to what we've been discussing. So I think as soon as, like I mentioned, once we have good examples of costs and the administration is actually be able to put out a financial plan, council will be much better positioned to decide actually how we move forward. Monsieur Leduc?
So, Madame Bonsoir, well, from us, from my chair at least, it will be part of the discussions taking place during the strategic plan. I think that's the timeline we're setting as far as 2023, but faced with different projects of similar magnitude and other projects, it's going to have to be a priority, and I think council will have to commit to which ones are the priority, and therefore confirming some more direct guidelines regarding start dates and stuff. So I think we're there when we discuss this strat plan, probably mid to end of April.
Want to say that?
Well, what I'm hoping then is that this document can be updated, or the reserve document can be updated when we do make that decision, because it is very important that these associations know and understand what we're reserving for and why. Okay, I understand it's here, but they don't have a light at the end of the tunnel at this point. And that's something that this council needs to make sure of, that there's that light at the end of the tunnel that says, yes, we're gonna be collecting these for X amount of time to ensure that we have this much money, so that when we start digging on this date and it's ready by this date, we have that much money available to us. If we just say we're gonna collect money in perpetuity, I wouldn't wanna pay it. Makes no sense. I'll never know when it's gonna happen, or if it ever is gonna happen. And then all of a sudden the funds get used to rehabilitate a facility rather than build new ones. So, I think that, I can't wait to see this report, and I'm hoping it happens sooner rather than later, now that the budget has been approved at the last meeting. So, for me, these ice pads are critical. This complex is critical as we move forward. We're growing, we have aging facilities that need to be replaced. We can't just Band-Aid them anymore. You look at all the work that's being done on them now. A couple more years down the road, and we got a report, 8 years ago that said they were, or 4 years ago that said they were in disrepair. And they only were gonna last a few more years anyway. So, at the end of this term of council, we're at the end of life of those facilities, so, without significant investment. And to me, I'm not putting significant investment into an old facility when new facilities should be on the horizon, so.
Okay, thank you very much. That will be a discussion coming at a later time. Other questions, comments? Quelque chose d'autre à ajouter? Monsieur Godin?
Merci, M. le maire. Donc, juste pour mentionner que j'ai aussi ajouté à l'annexe B, j'ai représenté les comparables par rapport aux frais d'usagers pour la piscine. Puis la raison que je rapporte ceci, puis je pense que je l'ai clarifié aussi dans le rapport, c'est pas, je suis pas certain si c'était clair avec le conseil. J'ai eu des discussions avec, à l'interne aussi avec l'autre département, que il y avait peut-être confusion, mais on n'a pas augmenté. Les user fees for the pool haven't been increased. What we presented with the budget was a comparable, and what it could look like if we were to increase by 15%. So just to clarify the council, at this point in time, no increase has been made to the pool user fees.
Okay, thank you, Monsieur Godin. I believe that we should be increasing the cost accordingly to this chart as well. If we're doing it for the arenas, we should be doing it for the pool facilities. I mean, realistically, we're talking, 50 cents for public swim, 57 cents. We're not. It's not the end of the world, but every little bit helps. Every little bit collected through user fees will just mean that much less to taxation going down the road. So I'm fine with it if other members of the council are okay with giving direction to increase the costs, or if we want to see it stay the same. Looking for direction, members of council. Conseil Larry?
Yeah, I definitely think that that's a necessity. The only thing that I'm questioning is, and this may be, I guess Madame Guiteau's not here, but I'm sure that Zick might be able to take back, is at the pool, are we gonna have the debit machine this year? Because going in with pennies and nickels and quarters and dimes for the kids to have a pretty much exact change, to me, makes no sense. We need to be able to provide an option to our users to allow them to actually go ahead and use the facilities if they're paying right then and there, on a per swim basis. I just think it makes sense. And if obviously we've got the two now at the arenas, maybe it's transferring one of those to the pool for the summer period, so I'm just making that suggestion, and I'm fully in support of the increase.
Okay, other members of council, we okay with C? I see yes, Councilor Tarnowski?
I just assumed that pricing would be rounded anyways, but you're right, it won't be, it'll be 405 or whatever, but you need something to make it easy for payments.
Okay, thank you, so, inclusive. D'autres questions, commentaires? Quelque chose d'autre à ajouter de l'administration? Non? Merci beaucoup. Move on to the next item, item D, correction in user fee rates, schedules A7, A10, and A11, report FS10 2019. The council receives report FS10 2019 dated March 4th, 2019, and adopts the amended user fee bylaw. Question, comments, members of council? This was just a correction. Anything to add from the administration? No? We're good? We'll move on. Item E, Asset Management State of Maturity Report, Report AM 02-2019. The council receives Report AM 02-2019 dated March 4, 2019, and it receives and endorses the attached Asset Management State of Maturity Report, Schedule A. Monsieur Leduc, Monsieur Godin, there was a lot of information in there.
Oui, merci, M. Maire. Yeah, so a lot of information. Basically, this was part two of the four-part project that we hired our consultants at Public Sector Digest to help us improve our asset management practices and to help us move forward with those with meeting the requirements from the province. This report here Similar to a report we had made a couple of years ago that was presented to council, just to show where we stand as a township in regards to our asset management practices, and kind of a to-do list, if you will, or a priority listing of where we should focus our efforts in that regards. This will serve as a good tool for the new asset management committee that we put in place in 2018. So we'll be using this to make sure we move forward with the recommendations in this report. And as we do, we will be reporting to council in our semi-annual activity reports to show progress. And also, as you've seen in the budget for 2019, we are starting to implement some financial strategies for asset management, and this is just kind of the next step in the direction we're moving in that process.
Thank you very much, Mr. Godin. Questions, comments, members of council? Councillor Tarnowski and then Councillor Ryan.
So I had a couple of questions. The study was done at what period? It was before the elections?
Through Mr. Mayor, so Councillor Tarnowski, yes, so the contract was given out to PSD back in June of 2018, and the works were started there. We had interviews with them and the departments so that they can evaluate our practices. So it was basically done from June to about September or October on that period.
So having now been on council, were council members interviewed for that study? I'm just wondering.
Council members interviewed?
Yeah.
No.
Because they're rating council's knowledge of asset management. I'm not sure how that's come about.
Mr. Godin?
So basically that rating and that evaluation is based on the information that's been reported to council and training opportunities that were offered to council. Basically it's more based on those reports to council and the feedback from administration. And one of the recommendations and one of the things we're going to be working with PSD to do also is to work as a communication between direction and council as well, just to keep you in the loop as to all the significant activities that are going on. And so that's where I think there might be a higher rating for staff than to council at one point in this report. And this isn't a reflection of, it's a reflection of the communication of what we've been doing from here to council and about all the best practices and stuff like that. We can do better at bringing more information in different formats and stuff like that.
I think as well, there's also opportunities, there's webinars, training courses on asset management that members of council have the ability to use their funds, discretionary funds to actually go learn about this. Councillor Tarnowski?
Just a follow-up question then. And the other thing on the current state of maturity, like there's ratings, there was advanced, intermediate, and basic. Is there any like background to those ratings in terms of making them measurable? So like throughout they rate advanced, intermediate, basic. Is it just kind of anecdotal, or is it how do I go from one to the next?
Mr. Godin?
Well, the way that the PSD prepared this report and the way they evaluate us, they have a kind of interview material where they have same list of questions or same list of items to verify with us about our practices, and they use this, and they've been using this with a lot of municipalities for a few years now. And so basically, going through those questions, we give feedback and we collaborate on what we do as a group and stuff like that. So I guess the rating, when we see intermediate, advanced, basic, I don't have a specific metric or a specific criteria to share with you, but they're based on their comparables from other municipalities. Where are we compared to the market, compared to the industry regarding those practices? So I guess it's intermediate. We could say is kind of average regarding where other townships or where other municipalities are in those practices. Where advanced would be, well, we've maybe gone a step further, and if it's basic, well, maybe that's probably where we should be focusing our efforts, and that's how those would be the points where they've made recommendations to improve.
Sorry, just to finish up on that then. So based on those ratings, as a staff that's gone through the process, do you feel that the ratings are generally accurate all the way through?
Yes, I would say so. I mean, we've had some back and forth, and I've seen the report and gone through and asked a lot of questions regarding a lot of their evaluations, and I do feel comfortable with where they're evaluating us, and I think the recommendations of the next steps and the next goals that we have to achieve are very achievable, and we have the structure in place now to move forward with those so that we can eliminate those red spots with the basic and move forward to intermediate or advanced.
Okay, thank you very much.
Conseiller Lahaye?
So I just wanna make sure that I understand the terminology of the recommendation, that we endorse the report. By endorsing the report, does that mean we approve all of the recommendations that are listed from page 24 to 28? Is that my understanding, or is there an actual approval of the recommendations that we need to provide within the context of the resolution?
Monsieur Leduc, Monsieur Godin?
Merci, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Lauren. So essentially, when we say receive and endorse, we're not really asking for approval or anything. Basically, there's nothing really to approve. It's more basically it's more of a report where they're reporting on their findings of what they've evaluated based on our discussions. When we complete our business plan and looking at the strategic plan and our business plans for this year and for next year and following one, for sure we'll be looking at these recommendations. Will we follow all of them as they are and say absolutely we have to do this in Q2 of 2020 and not necessarily, but I mean it does give us a good idea and gives us a good idea of where we are and where we should be focusing our efforts, and we'll be working towards trying to advance into those in all of those recommendations and to report to council back to keeping a little bit of progress as well.
Okay, then, I don't mean to be obstinate, but why do we have to endorse the plan? Why are we not just accepting the report or receiving the report if we're not doing anything else?
No, I understand your point, and I kind of agree. We could have, the resolution or the recommendation could just be to receive and to accept the report, and we can always change our resolution to reflect that.
I'll make the amendment at the time.
Absolutely.
Can we pull this one out, please? Thank you.
In that regards, I'll just make the comment that endorse it, receiving a report means that you can actually receive it and sit it on the shelf, whereas endorsing means that we're committed to actually moving forward with asset management. I think the provincial government doesn't allow too much freedom because there are certain criteria that have to be followed in the next few years. I like the fact that they're talking about level of service, because we know that we're going to have hard discussions coming up in the next few years, that if we want to maintain the current level of service going forward, then there's funding gaps there that we have to have a look at, and which might create challenges going forward. But I do believe that the asset management plan is something that's critical to most municipalities, or to all municipalities, and I'm glad that we're moving forward with it. So, thank you very much. Move on to the next item, F, Future of Russell Transpo, Report Eco-Dead 03-2019. That council acknowledge receipt of report Eco-Dead 03-2019 dated March 4th, 2019, and approve the tender document as presented in the report. Councillor Tarnowski.
So the tender document looks good to me. The only thing that I was wondering is on the evaluation criteria, it doesn't show any individual weighting on each of the categories. Are they all equally rated? That's my question.
Looking on the wrong side, that's it. Monsieur Leduc, Madame Tremblay.
Bonsoir. Donc, à la page 14 du document for the request for tender, there is a description of community profile and reference and experiences to be determined. So we will add a percentage in the evaluation criteria based on so basically what we're going to evaluate is the company profile, the reference and experiences of that company, organization capacity to meet the need, and the operating costs. So each of those categories will be attributed a percentage, and then that's how they're going to be evaluated.
Councillor Tarnowski.
Ok, alors ma question, ça serait plutôt, c'est la valeur de chaque, on va la rajouter plus tard, après que les...
Non, c'est juste qu'en ce moment, on n'avait pas déterminé encore les pourcentages, mais ça va être déterminé avant qu'on sorte le tender.
Ok, merci.
D'autres questions, commentaires dans ce conseil? Councillor Saucier.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering, with the LRT being delayed again, is this going to really affect your timeline?
Monsieur Leduc, Madame Tremblay?
Not really. The only difference that we have and the only news that we have with the LRT right now is that the rural passes, the $6 are being done and completed by March 31st.
Mhm.
So we're gonna send an email to our users this week to inform them that the passes will be void starting in March 31st. However, the contract that we have with the 417 industrial, the 417 bus line right now is that our contract is ending June 30th.
Mhm.
So we're going to tender to offer that contract even though if the LRT is delayed or even if the LRT moves ahead.
And did we meet the deadline for the preferred routes? It was March 1st, I believe?
Yeah, so we
Yeah.
sent an email to Ottawa,
Yeah.
to OC Transpo and to confirm that we are keeping the routes the way they are right now.
And it said they were dropping Mesman Station, I guess?
Yeah. So in our email that we sent to OC Transpo and to the City of Ottawa is that to confirm that we're keeping the routes the way they are. And even if after our discussion, they were talking about the reserved bus lane on the highway, that they would be discontinued and we would not be able to use them again. They have no date, so for that, we are still using the bus reserve lane on the highway until they informed us of the date that it's gonna be discontinued.
Okay, merci.
D'autres questions, commentaires? Anything to add from the administration?
No, so we just brought the RFP in front of council because there was a lot of question about the fuel of the price that would be included, so it was just to provide the information to members of council that the concerns that were expressed when we renewed that contract that we have presently is taken care of as part of the RFP. And just to give peace of mind of members of council, we have the option to not retain any bids that we will receive, so basically is to inform members of council that we will proceed. The RFP will be public tomorrow, and we'll see what we'll get.
Perfect. Look forward to seeing your report back. Thank you very much. Move on to the next item, item G, Environmental Assessment 417 Industrial Park. The council received report ISWAT WW01-2019 dated March 4, 2019 to confirm completion of phase 2 of the EA process and report to council after the review period is completed to determine next steps and to present financing options. Monsieur Leduc, Monsieur Bourgon, it's been a long time coming.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire. So I want to take a moment to explain to council the what's really involved in that DEA process, which was started back in 2016. Par la suite, suite au début de l'étude, la Ville d'Ottawa s'est jointe à l'étude environnementale entreprise par Russell. Donc, on a republié un autre avis pour mentionner l'amendement. Donc, durant cette étude, plusieurs sous-études, si on peut dire, ont été faites. So part of all those studies, which are all included in the file that's part of your package, so that's why it's so lengthy. There's the natural environment assessment that was completed. There's a stage 1, une étude archéologique. There's a geotech investigation that was also completed. There's an hydrogeological investigation and the servicing alternatives. So those studies are all part of the big package, really. So le processus d'étude environnementale, nous on se situe dans le Schedule B. Donc, en général, il y aurait 5 phases dans une étude, puis ce graphique-là se retrouve dans la partie du rapport, à la page 4 du rapport. So far, since it's a Schedule B, there's only 3 phases. Phase 1, 2, and Phase 5. So currently, we're sitting at the end of Phase 2. So you can see here on the board, where's the red circle? That's where we are, at the end of Phase 2, and ready for the notice of completion. So really, now that all the studies are completed, the one I just listed, the best alternative, we have costing of a Class D cost. So now it's available for review. So it's going to be available for review for the public for 30 days. At the end of that 30 days, will be done that notice of completion. So basically that satisfy the DEA process. So at that point in time, it's now up to council to take the decision if we proceed into phase 5, which would be the design phase. During that 30-day period, all the stakeholders and affected owners will be notified and will have their chance to review all the studies and put in their concern. If there's no part 2 order issued to the ministry, or how we used to call it, the bump up, then if there's no bump up, the study will be completed, and it's good for 10 years at that point. So at any point in time during that 10-year frame, council can take the decision to proceed with the design of bringing the services to the industrial park. If we go in the report itself, page 277 du package.
Quel appendix?
Ça va être dans M, c'est comme à la fin. Fait que ça, c'est la page 277. So I just want to show council that really, if you want to focus on reading maybe the conclusion of the preferred alternative, so that's where you can find it in the report itself. So, and from those, because I know there's several locations that you could, but that's a quick resume of the alternative. So really, the preferred option to bring the water to the park, ça serait de partir de Limoges Road, où la conduite d'eau principale est située présentement, puis de prolonger le long de Burton jusqu'au parc industriel, où une station, soit un réservoir ou une tour d'eau serait installée avec un metering station. And as for and also that reservoir would be sized accordingly for fire protection for the full park. And if through the design, we include Ottawa, well, it would be sized accordingly at that time to service the full area.
So just to be clear, when I look at the numbers per acre in green in the report, it's obviously cheaper if Ottawa is included, but they've stated that they're not participating. So are we looking at oversizing at this point in time so that they connect later? Or if we decide just to service Russell, is there obviously consideration down the road that Ottawa would have to pay a lot more to connect to the existing system?
Well, part of that like the study we just completed, there's fees associated with the oversizing for the Ottawa area. So during the design, we'll have to have further, and again, it depends of the timing, since the City of Ottawa are starting the review of their OP. So throughout our design phase, depending on when do we start, we'll have further discussion with Ottawa to see where they stand, and if we design accordingly to oversize, and at what premium that can be done to make sure that it's available for them if they decide to join in at that time. So obviously there's a further discussion that can happen with the City of Ottawa at that time.
Okay.
For the sanitary sewer, at this time the best option would be to have a gravity sewer from the park all the way to the Emblem Reservoir near the dog park to install a pumping station that would pump to the Russell Lagoon. So that's for the two preferred options that's stated in the report. And in the report, the council can also will see the other options that were considered as well. And I want to take to focus the attention of council on the cost of the project, of where we stand originally compared to the cost estimate that we have now in the back in 2012, Stantec did a study for the servicing options for water and sewer, and that amount was around the $13 million mark, which for And I have it, the table shows the breakdown in between the water and sewer. So for water, it was almost $14 an acre, and
$14,000, we would have made the decision back then.
$14,000 an acre, and for the wastewater, $25,000. Now, with DE completed, we know more of what type of infrastructure is required to do the project. So those are the items highlighted in yellow, where we can see the big difference. We know how much local services is needed, so there's more accurate metering compared to what was prepared in 2012. Donc, les estimés qu'on a maintenant dans les demeurent un Class D estimate, mais qui sont beaucoup plus réalistes. Les infrastructures principales ont été ajustées en conséquence pour les prix. Donc, c'est ce que les lignes jaunes représentent. And since now the township OP was reviewed last year, there's more land included. So that had a benefit to, yes, it increased the cost of servicing the area, but you got more land to split the cost. So that's why if you look at the acreage prices, it remains a similar amount for water and sewer. And and like Mr. Mayor just mentioned, if we include the area of Ottawa, well, the price would go down. Since you're adding more land and your main infrastructure, the cost doesn't change that much.
So in 2012, we were looking at 14 and 25, roughly 39,000. And at this point in time, we're looking at roughly about the same thing as well.
Yeah, that's correct. Just because we're adding more land.
We're adding more land, and we can't forget the increased cost over that time frame, and we're still at the same amount as 2012 as well. So.
And there's still like 15% contingency, and there's also a provision items of $3.5 million as well, part of that cost estimate.
Okay. Question, Conseiller Larrey?
And that's assuming that everybody that's currently in the park participates?
That's correct. That's just looking at the serviceable area itself. So we're not considering if it's existing owners or non-developed. It's just looking at to service that area. So really, that's what the DEA is looking at this point in time. So once our 30 days period review is completed, we'll report back to council, and we'll start looking at the financial option as well, to look at the existing and what can be done in different scheme of financing to bring the services to the park.
Okay. Conseiller Brisson and Conseiller Larrey.
Just to know, if we add Ottawa, does that put our lagoon and even the size of the main pipe coming from Ottawa at the kind of maximum, or there's still leadway for future development?
Mr. Bogo?
Again, it all depends on timing, but there's capacity right now in the main for water coming from Ottawa. Same for the lagoon, but obviously there's expansion that will be triggered in some point in time, depending of the timing of which project comes first.
And obviously that would be accounted for if Ottawa triggers more expansion, then they'll have a cost.
Exactly, and those are all things like part of the design. We'll know exactly how much units required. Right now, it's estimates. And obviously, it's going to be even more accurate at that point.
Merci. Conseiller Larrey?
So, is it, regardless of the cost of what each acreage would be, 14,000, 39,000, whatever the number is it a foregone conclusion that everyone is connecting that is currently in the park?
Monsieur Leduc, Monsieur Bourgon?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So at this point in time, the study of what we've done doesn't look at who's connecting, who's not. It's really to see what it costs as a whole to bring the services to the serviceable area of the industrial park.
So then council will make a decision at a later date, is what you're saying, about who connects and what the cost might be, or whether or not we force everybody to connect?
True,
Is that
Mr.
my
Mayor. So
understanding?
that's correct. So that's why the recommendation tonight is to receive the report. It's to council to go through the different part of the studies, submit your comments throughout the next month, and then we'll report back afterwards to tell council that DEA is now completed. It's valid for 10 years, so when administration will be working on a different option to present to council for the decision to move forward to the design phase of that project or not.
Yeah. And obviously, the financing options doesn't take into account potential grants, partnerships, all that kind of stuff. This is the total cost of the project, and then we'll see what the financing plan is like at a later date.
That's correct.
D'autres questions, commentaires? Quelque chose d'autre à ajouter, M. Bertrand?
So again, it's a 30-day period. Everybody will receive email, letters throughout the week. It's going to be advertised on our website. There's going to be hard copies available here at City Hall. So for the 30 days for people to review and submit their comments. So council are welcome to submit any questions or comments they can have, and we'll report back at the end of that period of time.
Okay. Merci beaucoup, M. Bertrand. Move on to item H, Bill 68 Update Integrity Commissioner, Report CL08-2019. The Council receives Report CL08-2019 dated March 4, 2019, and approves the following bylaws. 1, to establish the Office of the Integrity Commissioner and a complaint protocol for the Council Code of Conduct. And 2, to appoint an Integrity Commissioner and enter into a service agreement for the services of the Integrity Commissioner with Mr. John Sewa. Questions, comments, members of Council? Anything to add from the administration? No? Perfect, we'll move on to the next item. Item I, request for free hall rental from our MPP. Amanda Simard, verbal report CAO 2019. Monsieur Leduc.
Je suis le membre du conseil, donc on avait remis dans le package la lettre qui m'a été adressée sur la demande de la députée provinciale pour pouvoir utiliser la salle au dôme sportif pour une journée semaine entre 9h et midi, donc 3 heures. Vous savez, dans les frais d'usager, la tarification pour la location de la salle est de 25 $ de l'heure. Donc, dans ce cas-ci, ça serait 75 $ par semaine, qui fait un total de 300 $ par mois si, effectivement, on passe toutes ces heures-là au don présentement. Donc, c'est la demande de Mme Simard. On avait eu des discussions par rapport à une location gratuite, mais comme j'ai mentionné à Mme Simard, je dois apporter ça au conseil si jamais le conseil est d'accord avec ça. Donc, so I did mention to Mrs. Simard that she was requesting a free rent for those her staff using that room, but I did confirm to her that I would have to bring it to council if there was a request for a free rent like she has done tonight. So this is why it's in front of council for decision and discussion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leduc. I'll just make 2 points before we move on. My first point is, as a former member of council, I believe Madame Simon knows our protocols, knows that we have a user fee bylaw in place, and that any changes have to go through council. So usually politics send the emails to politics and not to the administration. But that's that's a discussion I can have with her, that if she has requests of council, to send it directly to council. In regards to the 3 hours, I believe members of parliament, provincial and federal, have budgets specifically for their ridings to hold activities. I have no problems, giving a discount, because, if she wants to agree to a contract of a 1-year contract to so many hours per week, I'm willing to entertain a discount. I'm not sure if we want to give something completely free, though. We are talking about a facility that we usually generate revenue from. So, conseiller Brisson and conseiller Laurent.
As I did ask before, Mr. the CEO, Mr. Leduc, it was just to know whenever there was the office of Mr. Lemire here, if we were charging or if he added free. So I know that they will have to check, because it was before Mr. Leduc time. So it was just to see if it was done before too.
Yeah, before my time, I'm not sure. We can find out that information. I have confirmed with our MP, Mr. Francis Drouin. He does have an office here in Embrun, and he does pay an amount in rent. I can't tell you exactly what the amount is, but he does pay rent for his facility. Conseiller Laurent.
can save the trouble of administration on this one, as I was here when we made the decision to, send a letter to Mr. Lemieux that we would now be charging him for rent, if he wanted to continue to use the room. So, yes, there was the back room over here that was used as his office at no charge, for whatever the amount of hours per week it was. However, council then made the decision that, we were unable to provide that free hall, or free room rental to him going forward, and that if he wanted to continue to use it, he would have to pay a fee. So, I don't know how we would revert back to, allowing a free rental for somebody. I'm in agreement that if, Madame Simon wants to use one of our facilities, that I'm sure that she has a budget within her office to pay for, satellite offices, and that she pays the township accordingly.
Okay, other questions, comments? So are we entertaining the idea of giving a discount if she books for a year? Or do we just wanna do, it's full price and that's it, that's all? Counselor Associate?
I would be in favor of the discount rate. Like you said, I'm sure she does have a budget, and, like, are we losing funding for those 3 hours once a week? That was the other question I had. I don't have an issue with her using the space, but, you know, I believe that, discount rate would be feasible.
Good. D'autres questions, commentaires? Conseiller Lorrain?
I'm open to the discount rate if needed, but, I mean, at $75 a week for 3 hours use of the facility, I think is still very reasonable. So, I think that's an administrative item that we could let, Monsieur Le Duc, Madame Gatal work out with the,
Does the user fee policy allow that flexibility, Monsieur Le Duc? I don't think so, eh? No, so if council wants to give direction as to what we charge, we have to give the direction, and it'll have to come back and be approved by council at a later date. Okay.
so you're looking for direction of percentages at this point then?
Well, I'll just make a recommendation, instead of $25 an hour, we give $20 an hour, and so $60, you know, it's roughly, 15-20% discount.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, is everybody okay with that? Conseiller Tarnowski?
I just had a question, because I'm a little bit shocked, so we don't allow the staff to make this kind of decision?
The user fee policy states exactly what the rates are. There is no flexibility at the administrative level to cut deals.
Otherwise, they have to do this.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Other questions, comments? No, so we can give direction, Monsieur Le Duc, knock it down to $60 for 3 hours, $20, and if Madame Simon agrees to accept that for a 1-year contract, then it can be presented to council and we can sign off on it at that point in time. Councilor Tomasky?
Since we're discussing these discounts, better make sure that we're clear that it's based on a 1-year contract, so not a 1-month contract or, okay.
Yeah,
thank you.
that's the only reason I suggested it, is that it's a 1-year contract.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Monsieur Le Duc?
Monsieur le maire, les contrats sont pas de au conseil, par exemple. Donc, si la direction, c'est un contrat pour 1 an, I won't bring my report in front of council to say we signed the contract. We had a direction.
That's good enough?
We signed the contracts administratively, yes, if that's
Perfect.
the case.
Thank you very much. Just inform council, let us know if you have any. Okay. Item 12, reports from an investigator or the ombudsman, we have none. Item 13, notice motions, we have none. Item 14, question period on meeting of the day. I'll ask anyone who has a question on the meeting of the day to please come up to the lectern and state your name and address and ask a question.
Harry Baker, Sadot.
Light on?
Lights on.
Now the lights on. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I
I'm
can
still
hear
on
you.
4th Road in Russell. I have a question on 11G. So my understanding is we're looking at about $30 million for the wastewater and water network to service the industrial park. And my understanding is that each of the existing, businesses are gonna pay so much per acre as their share of the construction costs?
That would be correct. We'll have more information at the financial presentation. But
And are they each gonna be charged a DC charge? A development charge, just like any other resident is going to be charged?
Any new construction property pays a DC charge, is that correct, Madame Tremblay?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's over and above the construction costs that are mentioned in this report?
Yep,
Okay, thank you.
no problem. Any other questions? Conseil Florent?
Hold on, I just wanna be clear on that question and that answer that was just given. So, was the question whether or not they would be charged an additional capital charge as being proposed within the village cores?
Yes.
Or was it?
You're talking about a DC charge?
I'm talking about a capital charge for converting from what they have now, because they obviously must
Okay,
have a septic and a well.
Just speak in the mic so that the
They
people
must
on the
have a
mic can-
septic and a well now, so they're gonna be converting to the new network.
Okay,
I'm just
so
wondering
that's-
if you're being consistent with what you're proposing for the residents.
Okay, so that's two different items, because a DC charge is for an empty property right now that is a new construction, that's why about new
Okay.
constructions.
All right.
So you're talking in regards to capital
A
charges.
conversion charge for
Conversion charge.
going from a private sewer and water system, or septic and water system, now to the new network that's going to be put in.
Okay. Monsieur Leduc, Monsieur Bourgon, we haven't gone to that step of the process yet?
Mr. Mayor, no, not yet, but it's gonna be part of the option in all the discussion we'll have, at a
In the
later
coming
date.
discussion on the converted. Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Charles Armstrong, still on Castle Bow Street. It's reference item 11I, the facilities for Madame Simard. I'm asking, is it not that we have in our rental policy a free rental of facilities for public agencies? And I give you the examples such as the Canadian Blood Services for blood donor clinics and the Eastern Ontario Health Unit for immunization clinics. Would Madame Simard's requests not fall in the same category?
Good question, Monsieur Leduc. I'd just like to point out, we have a public agency right next door who are paying rent, so I wouldn't wanna see them start getting free services. But, Monsieur Leduc?
I'm gonna have to check that out. I don't think it was eligible, but maybe it is. I think for this room, when we rent it to the counties for an hour, it's free. But if it was to be on a regular basis like that, every week for 3 hours, this would maybe a fee charge, that's for sure.
It's not a one-off, it's a consistent weekly. Okay,
Okay, thanks.
thank you. Before we move on to the next item, we'll take a 10-minute break. We'll come back at 7:30. Yep. Welcome back, everyone. We now fall at item 15, resolutions. Notice a motion to amend something previously adopted or rescind. Moved by Councillor Associé, seconded by myself. Whereas on Monday, February 4th, 2019, the notice of motion moved by Mayor Leroux and seconded by by Councillor Tarnowski, titled Capital Conversion Principles, was defeated. And whereas after further reflection, I'd like to reconsider that notice of motion. And whereas section 15.15 of our procedural bylaw allows me to give notice to request its reconsideration, therefore be resolved that I submit this request for consideration at our next meeting of council. So it's moved by Councillor Associé and seconded by myself. It's on the table. Questions, comments? Councillor Lorrain?
think my comments are clear last time, but I'm gonna make the same recommendation to council that we defer any decisions on this until after the meeting that we are having on Thursday.
Okay.
So bring it back to the next meeting.
Just to be clear, this notice of motion is to whether we bring back the previous notice of motion. So we have to decide if we're willing to bring it back.
I thought we were reconsidering it tonight.
If we approve the notice of motion of Councillor Associate, that we want to discuss it tonight. So she gave notice that she would like to bring it back. We have to approve that request. If we approve that request, then the original notice of motion is back on the table. Tonight, that's correct.
Okay.
So at this point in time, it's whether we accept Councillor Associate's notice of motion to bring this item tonight.
Then I'll start off with a no.
Okay. Moved by myself, Councillor Associate. Any other comments on this? I'll call for a vote then in order to bring it back. Oh, Councillor Bertrand?
Yeah. So, it's just to bring back, it's not to talk about the motion,
This motion here is to bring back the other motion. If we accept this, the other motion comes on the table and we discuss it tonight.
or,
So I'll call for the vote then. All those in favor of Councillor Associate's motion? All those opposed? Okay, carried. So now we are bringing back the notice of motion that was presented on February 4th. So automatically it's on the table, Madame Camille Laflamme? Question, commentaire? Councillor Lorrain?
Yeah, I'm gonna state, and I'll say the same thing I just said, and I request that we defer this decision on this resolution to the next meeting of council, based on the fact that we have a capital charges study meeting on Thursday of this week, which will provide greater information to what this resolution talks to.
So moved by Conseiller Lorrain to defer this meeting. Do we have a seconder?
To defer the discussion,
To defer the
resolution.
Yeah.
You said this meeting, the discussion.
The discussion, to defer this motion to the next meeting. So we have moved by Conseiller Lorrain. Do we have a seconder? So we don't have a seconder at this point in time, so that motion is not, that amendment is not carried. So now it is being discussed this evening, so questions, comments? Councillor Tarnowski?
So I'm just not gonna repeat everything I said the last time, so I stand by what I had said originally, the idea and the reason behind it, just for the record, so.
Okay, thank you very much. Conseiller Lorrain?
Yeah, so every single one of the items that I brought up during the last meeting, I still stand behind as well. I don't believe that especially the last comment, I know you mentioned you can take it out, but still in there, regarding identifying all of those units as growth, which we have no idea whether they are or not. Secondly, the guidelines, again, are, to me, still unreasonable to the homeowners when, one or two homeowners take up the fray of everybody else to put it in, because they want to and the others don't, which is obviously their prerogative. However, the repayment of those funds goes to the new homeowner if they sell their house, which I find is absolutely unrealistic, and I don't know how we could support something to that effect. And the third reason, and the biggest reason of all, that I can't support this notice of motion, is the fact that it holds no teeth. The municipal act governs whether or not council can force people to connect or not force people to connect. So this is simply a guideline that says, well, we may not force you to connect based on our guidelines, but council can then make a different decision. So really, why is it there? Because council can make the decision not to charge them in the first place. So I just find that it's not gonna do anything, doesn't hold any teeth, and the guidelines are flawed, and the notice of motion is flawed, so I can't support it.
Okay, thank you very much. D'autres questions, commentaires? Conseiller Brisson?
ouais, vous n'avez pas pu participer aux dernières discussions, je m'en excuse. Pas que j'étais parti en vacances, mais que j'étais là. La seule chose dedans, c'est un peu justement leur paiement à l'autre, comme at the ownership of the house. That is a bit strange, because then for maybe 5% that of the group that don't accept to go, it will make the project higher for the other one that will have to pay to advance that money. And then they might receive some, they might not. So that's a bit on the biased way. What I was thinking was maybe if somebody doesn't want the service, that they don't have to pay it right away. It could be a deed on their house whenever they sell it, because I know it did happen to some other for whenever the water was brought from Ottawa. Because when my dad bought the house, he had a deed on it that there was something to pay back whenever it was paid.
Just to clarify, I don't think you mean a deed, you mean a lien?
A lien,
A lien on
sorry.
the property.
Yeah.
Okay.
Une garantie.
Ouais, une garantie.
OK. Ça fait que c'est pour ça que j'avais pensé, ben, peut-être que là, tu gardes le montant à tout le monde, puis tu n'as pas remboursé les autres quand que ceux qui ont décidé de ne pas aller avec, to repay. But I know that if there's too many people that don't participate in the project, it cut the borrowing capacity of the municipality, that it's us that have to carry it. So that's my two concern that I have with the both ideas. So.
Okay, merci. Councillor Chernowski?
So I guess, just to clarify, so it doesn't matter what happens, at the end of the day, if someone doesn't want the service, this process allows them not to have to pay for the service that they don't want. Whereas on the flip side, if someone wants the service, there is a cost associated to it. In that cost, there is an opportunity down the road for the value of the house to recoup some of those costs if neighbors do connect or not. But it all boils down to the fact that nobody's going to get forced into spending a tremendous amount of money if this is not something that they want to do, or it's a service or something that they currently don't want. So I think that's the big strong value in this proposition. So there's always two sides to the coin. We're talking about the 5% that might get away without paying. But it's the other way around, is those people are forced to pay if they're never going to connect. And when we did have some people here, when we had an open forum discussion, there was a lot of people said, look, we don't want to connect, we're never going to connect. And so why are you forcing this down our throat? So this is just kind of to mitigate that situation. I think that's something that's important for me. And that's why I believe that this is a good idea. In answer to Councillor Lorraine's very good argument about this not having teeth, that's absolutely correct. In my short time here as a councillor, I could say the same pretty much of anything that we make decisions on, because we can reverse decisions as we're doing tonight on anything that we do. So it could be said about any of the even bylaws that we put out. Thank you.
Councillor Lorraine?
I just wanted to clarify a couple of things, because the one piece that I heard was that, if this goes through, it's giving the impression to the public that, or these 600 affected people, that council will never force them to pay a fee if the pipe goes in. But that's not 100% accurate, because council can always make the decision to force them to connect, right?
That is correct.
So, I don't think my comment was off there. The fact is, it is accurate that we could force them anyway. We have forced many different people within this community under these local improvement projects to pay their costs. May not be the full connection, but at least the pipe in front of their house, they had to pay it.
Yep.
So that's always been the case. So I don't understand how this piece works. The second piece that I think is truly important, and I don't know where you were going with it, if you could elaborate on it, it'd be great, when you mentioned that this would be onto the value of the property of the affected houses that do connect, and that it would be a benefit once others connect. If somebody sells their house, are you assuming that they're gonna get a larger value for their house because there's this infrastructure cost that they've paid out? I just wanna make sure I understand correctly, because there's no way anyone's gonna pay extra for a house with the understanding that at some point in time down the road, somebody may connect and there may be a windfall. Okay?
Councillor Tarnowski?
So, apples with apples, if you're comparing one house next to the other, and it's the same exact house, and one is connected already, there is more value to it. I mean, that's minimal, but there is value, there is increased value. If nothing else, there is increased value there. And that potential windfall, it may not be a windfall, because then we might be talking about an extra 5% that connects. The example that was put in here was just for understanding the math purposes around it. So, again, it's not 100% perfect, but again, neither is the other one where we're at 66%. We're forcing 33% of the people to have to people that are retirees in some cases that would have to pay for all this infrastructure that they do not want. And I have a real issue with that. And then going back to the point of forcing someone to connect, I think that in the spirit of this, the only time that we would be forcing someone to connect is if there are environmental concerns or issues where there's contamination, where we're kind of being told that they have to connect. That's my understanding, unless I'm missing something there, but that's my understanding of it.
And just to clarify, these are guiding principles, and yes, council always has the right to say, yes, we're charging. But this is, by passing this resolution, this council is saying, these are the guiding principles we wanna use going forward. And that's all it is. Council, yes, can change their mind and say, yeah, there's 66% of the people want it, we wanna force it on people. Of course, council has that right, and they'll always have that right because of the way the law is written. But this is trying to give some sense of understanding to the residents. While if I make a promise, I'm the type of person that tends to keep it. If I tell somebody, I'm not going to force you to connect, I will vote in favor of not forcing that person to connect. Whether a council comes down later and changes their mind, as any council can do with any bylaw, because the reality is we can change any bylaw at any time. That is council's prerogative. So, saying that it's false hope, well, it's false hope with any bylaw because we can change them any time. But this is specifically putting in writing that the direction of this council, if approved, is to sort of, to say that moving forward, this is what we're using as guiding principles, and if, yes, council can change its mind down the road if they so choose. Conseiller Buisson.
Juste pour revenir à mon point, c'est que, comme conseiller Laurent a mentionné, que si quelqu'un a payé un certain montant, il ne peut pas dire quand il vend sa maison, I put in advance 20,000, you're sure that you will receive that money because you don't know whenever the other will hook on that they will receive a check. Mais de l'autre bord, if you put that, okay, it will be a lien on the property, then it's easy to handle and it's sure that it's on it and that everybody had share his part for the project.
But just to be clear, putting a lien on the property is forcing those individuals to connect. Whether it's that person or it's the next person that sells the house, that's buying that house, that person buying the house is now forced to connect.
I think there's a difference, and I want some clarification. There's a difference between to connect directly and having some regular fee after with flat fee, and having to pay for the pipe that pass in front. Because I think the only time that you can force somebody to connect directly is, as Councillor Tarnowski mentioned, if there's contamination or things like that. Otherwise, you can force somebody, force them
Okay.
that the pipe pass in front, and he should participate, because your house worth more because it pass in front. But then, if they don't, for a reason or another, whether it's they have it on small expansion, they don't have to have the money to advance, they don't have to pay directly. It's the municipality that will take on the load with interest, that whenever they sell the house, then they will have that.
So at that point in time, the person who is selling their house
Yeah.
with a lien on the property has to take into account that I cannot sell my house for the value I think it's worth. I'll have to deduct the amount of the project.
Yeah, but they will the house will be worth a bit more because it's passing in front. So what it will,
Not necessarily. What happens
It's
if
the same
the,
argument the other way around.
if the person coming in doesn't want the services, now they're forced to pay for the services that they didn't want.
that's,
Yeah, so, Councillor Associate.
Okay, thank you. The reason why I wanted to bring this back was the statement that we had said was we didn't want to cause undue hardship, and that we, most of these people, like you said, are retiring. They cannot recover the cost in their homes. These are all older homes, over 40 years. So you can't even add $100,000 onto a house to sell it. There's no way. So this was the concern that was coming from the residents, is that they couldn't afford it, number one, and that they didn't want it, number two. So that's, and at first I was agreeing with Councillor Laurent where I wanted it deferred because I still wanted more information, and then it got shot down. So I wanted this part to be at least approved, and then we'll see what happens at the next meeting. I also just want to make sure that we are informed, have informed the residents that are affected by this, because I think they should all be at the meeting on Thursday to make sure that they are aware of, you know, impending costs, because it is very stressful for a lot of people, especially older families that are in the area, and they just don't have the income. So this is why I wanted to bring it up.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Associate. Just to be clear, this is different than the capital charges bylaw discussion. Okay.
that's what I wanted to mention, that's two different things too, because this is just to know if we're paying, even if we don't charge the tax, that's for even the pipe that is passing, and the other one, it's a tax, so.
This is in regards to the infrastructure.
Yeah, that's it, that's
Still
different.
$100,000.
Councillor Tarnowski, then Councillor Yedare.
I just want to echo what Councillor Saucier said. And in the election process and going door to door and talking to people, that's one of the things that stood out to me the most, is that that people were going to be forced, and in many cases retirees, they're going to be forced to take on this big debt. And in some cases, people were saying that houses that they've lived in for the last 30, 40 years, that they would be forced to sell that house because they couldn't handle that. And so, you know, as much as we can look at the 66% and the value of that, the reality goes down to the individual families, individual residences. By doing something like this, we're removing that stress, and it may mean that there will be less demand for these upgrades. But at the end of the day, I think it's my responsibility as a councillor to take that into account. Thank you.
Councillor Yedare?
Yeah, the stress that you felt out on the campaign trail, I can tell you it was brought on by the capital charges bylaw. Prior to that, there was not a lot of discussion surrounding the connections in certain areas and when all the other areas were gonna be connected over time, if they ever would be. It was the capital charges bylaw that brought that stress on. We have no information as of today, even though the meeting is on Thursday, on where we are with that project. where we are with that at all. So I don't know how we can stand up here today and say, well, no one's ever gonna be forced to connect that doesn't want to connect, and then identify every one of those units as growth tonight. We haven't had the meeting, we haven't had discussion, we talk about the connection out front, the connection to the house, the capital charges, we talk about them all as one, but they're not. These are all separate issues that need to be dealt with, and we're dealing with one piece of it tonight before hearing all the other stuff. So, to me, that's why I requested to have it deferred. No one wanted to support it, then we're gonna deal with this. And unfortunately, I know you and the mayor wrote this up and put this out with the best of intentions, but there are still issues with it that haven't been dealt with. So, I don't know how you can ask me to support this notice of motion and the guiding principles as drafted. So, I've already stated many different pieces on it, but, I mean, we're going nowhere with it, so.
Thank you. Conseiller Brisson, last comment?
It was, I just wanted to have it more clear, maybe from the staff. How can you, not justify, but say to somebody, pay more now, and you might receive some money, but you don't know if it will be the next buyer or two buyers, because you don't know at what time the other will come in.
Well,
Is there a way, because that's the only part I find, how do you control this? And
I think the reality is that the way this is written is somebody going ahead with the infrastructure cost on the street, this is the cost of the project. If two people did not participate, these are the costs. If the residents choose to move forward with those costs, that is their choice. If there happens to be somebody connecting down the road, then they will get a reimbursement. But the cost of the project is what's presented to them. I mean, we saw it with McDougall where everybody got a rebate check when a lot was created. If that lot had not been created, the cost of the project would have stayed the same. But because there was a new connection, that's why everybody got a discount.
for how long?
Hey?
Sorry to cut you, but for how long do you keep that? Do you keep it for 50 years? Because they might decide to tear down the house in 2 generations in 50 years. So in 50 years, are you going to say, oh, okay, there's 2 new houses that is connecting on those connections that you send back the check because they paid a bit more 50 years ago? How long does it go? That's the other question that is not clear. How you go and how long? Because
Then if you have a suggestion, we can always move an amendment if you want to put in a certain period of time. But I think if somebody owns a house now and pays a little bit more, and in 20 years down the road, somebody decides to connect and pay that fee, are you going to turn around and say, no, the township's not giving you that portion back? Are you going to take the rebate, the extra added value, but are you going to take away the amount that they could have, that property could have received because it's been too long?
But in this, it doesn't say any time. It doesn't say if it's the same owner, if it's the new house.
It specifies that it's the property.
The property, but as I was saying, is it 10 years? Is it 50 years? It makes quite a lot of difference because in 50 years it can change completely.
Well, I
We
think
have
that
a lot of floods.
in 50 years, if somebody's deciding to connect with the added charges on there, I would be very surprised because they're paying an indexing fee for a 50-year period. So the chances of
Where is that?
that is included in the bylaws, or in the notice of motion, in the guiding principles, it's clearly stated that they will be paying the original the cost plus the indexing fee. On peut-tu, so if you look in the last column, it says indexing from this point in time.
So that,
So the chances, the chances of somebody connecting down the road after a project has gone ahead, with as the time gets longer, the chance of them connecting, I think, diminishes with time.
Yeah, but then it don't make it fair if it's the second owner, because of the two first owner that didn't want it to pay to connect, then the third owner that want the service is almost not able to justify because they has an index instead of having just a regular connection.
Still think it's so. If you don't want it, if
Oui, mais si tu peux avoir du royalty service à ce temps,
Nice.
deux générations.
if somebody decides they want services 2 generations down the road, then buy a house with services. I mean, that's the reality of that property. I think we've had a lot of discussion at this point in time. It's on the table. If there's no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. Registered vote. Okay. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay. Notice motion is passed. We'll move on to item B. Motion that council approve all recommendations listed on the agenda under item 11, reports from departments and council committees. We'll put on the floor, and I believe there's an item to be on B. So need a mover and seconder to put on the table. Moved by Councillor Konoski, seconded by Conseiller Brisson. I need an amendment to remove item E. Councillor Lorraine, Councillor Associate to separate item E. Yes? All those in favor to separate item E? It's now separate. So we're motion that council approve all recommendations listed on the agenda under item number 11, reports from departments and council committees, except for item E. All those in favor? All those opposed? Carried. We'll now go back to item E, the asset management state of maturity report. Need a mover and a seconder. Put on the table, moved by Councillor Tonoski, seconded by Conseiller Brisson. Questions, comments? Conseiller Lorrain.
I make an amendment that we remove the and endorses the attached.
Okay, moved by Conseiller Lorrain. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Associate.
Or just, just remove the and endorses.
And endorses, receives the attached asset management. Okay, questions and comments? All those in favor of the amendment? All those opposed? The amendment is carried. So the resolution will now read that council receives report AM 02-2019 dated March 4, 2019, and receives the attached asset management state of maturity report schedule A. All
Just to make sure, who was the mover and seconder of the amendment?
Second.
Thank you.
the amendment, all those in favor, and call the vote, all those in favor, all those opposed, carried. We move on to section 16, bylaws. Motion that council approve bylaws 2019-036 to 2019-039 inclusively for first, second, and third reading as listed on the agenda. Being a bylaw for amendment property owned by Florent and Josée Bertrand. Being a bylaw to amend Schedule A7, transfer fees and water sewage rates. Being a bylaw to establish the Office of the Integrity Commissioner, and being a bylaw to appoint the Integrity Commissioner. Okay, we need a mover and a seconder, moved by Conseiller Brisson, seconded by Councillor Tonoski. All those in favor? All those opposed? Carried. Item 17, new business reports, we have none. Item 18. We had item 1, Councillor Associate for the Irish Tea.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to let the public know that the museum, Keithford Museum, is hosting an Irish tea party on March 17th. There'll be an Irish band playing the Gallaghers and also some Irish dancers, the Patterson family. The museum is open from 1 to 4. The music starts at 2, and this is a free event. So we welcome everyone to join us.
Thank you very much, Councillor Saucier. You had a second item as well for Théard Léger.
Oh, I just wanted to inform the public, we were at the open house on February 28th for the TR Léger School Satellite, which is located at 738 Notre Dame in Embrun. And it's adult continuing education and training, and you can check out their website and their courses. And it's a nice facility just across the road. So myself, the mayor, and Councillor Brisson were there, and it was I'm happy to have it in our community.
Thank you very much, Councillor Saucier. Item 3, Conseiller Brisson, Clinique de Sang.
Yeah, it's just for the blood clinic for donation. It will be in Embrun this Wednesday, the 6th. It will be from 2 to 4 and 5 to 8. So it doesn't cost anything to give and can save a lot of life. So just wanted to make sure that a lot of people go.
Okay, merci beaucoup, Conseiller Brisson. Item 4, Councillor Kanoski for the meeting on Thursday.
So I just had a couple of questions pertaining to the capital charges bylaw special council meeting on Thursday. I'm trying to understand the purpose of this meeting. If I remember correctly, in the past, we had discussed something about having a kind of an open house where people would be invited. So I just want to make sure that we went through that process. And is this the meeting where we're doing that, where we're having people? I thought we would have had a bigger room for that. Just want to know that we emailed all the people that had a stake in this. I just want to make sure that we went through the process that we had kind of discussed and agreed with when we originally brought this forward.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kanoski. Just one point before Mr. Leduc. Our part for council meetings, through our procedural bylaw, meetings can only be held in this room. Is that correct? Unless it's an emergency situation, but our procedural bylaw allows only for meetings of council in this room. Just so for future ones. Monsieur Leduc.
So, Madame Conseil, well, also on top of that, we're set up for webcasting. We've been requested to record this special meeting. We'll be doing that. So therefore, people, if the room's too small, you can either stay at home and watch the presentation on the web live. So it just frees up some space for those who would like to stay at home and watch the webcast. If we were to be moving this meeting elsewhere, the facility may not be able to record this webcast.
Okay. Councillor Kanoski.
So can we just go through what the agenda is for that particular that date, just to make sure that I'm fully understanding what we're doing, what our goal is?
Monsieur Leduc.
So tomorrow, council will, like normally, will get your agenda. You have a package. You'll see a presentation. There's a slide deck that tends to go over all the elements we had raised with council. Also, we were last time we had this discussion from council, we had lots of questions. We were directed from council to get answers to these questions and provide all the information we have from data back many years ago regarding different things, and it's been all looked up, referred to, put on a slide deck, and provided to council for information. Once council sees that recommendation, that presentation, it will give us a direction regarding what next. Because I know you would like us to go and meet all kinds of individuals. Ideally, these 600 of them. I don't think this is necessary. That's from our position, the administration. But you will have all the information that you need to be clearer, to get a clearer direction as to what are the next steps in this project. So this is why we're doing this, and we're providing. And that's what I had said to council last time. We need to provide you more information before we get direction as to what are the next steps. So therefore, you'll have all the information in front of you on Thursday.
Yeah, there was a lot of questions at the last meeting.
Yep.
We gave a lot of requested the administration to bring that back to us. So it'll be available obviously through the website, and all the members of the public will have access as well. And we now have a question period at our special meetings, so residents will have the opportunity to pose questions there as well. And as Mr. Leduc said, then we'll be able to give a direction as to where council wants to go, if we go with public open house or, but at least we'll have all the information presented to us, and we'll be able to give direction at that point in time.
Thank you.
Councillor Saucier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess my concern is still that many residents aren't aware of it at all. So, I'm just, like, we talked about sending a letter, like, I'm not saying go and see every resident, but, I'm just concerned that some people just don't have us on their radar and they're not, aware of any, impending charges, so that was, cause I have run into residents where they said, had no idea, like, they started asking me questions of what's going on. So I just sort of feel there's been not the greatest communication on that. And I know I'm hoping we'll have it very clearly on our website tomorrow, I guess, but it's just not a lot of notification for some people to attend.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Associate. Councillor Larry?
Yeah, so to be clear then, on the agenda, because we haven't seen an agenda as of yet for the Thursday meeting, there will be no vote on the bylaw, second reading or third reading, is that correct?
Monsieur Leduc?
That's correct, we're looking for a direction, but no vote on the specific bylaw at this time.
Okay. Second one is to the clerk, and I just wanna make sure that comment was accurate. In terms of holding any council meetings, is this the only room that a council meeting can be held in?
I just looked at the, and it says I can get you out give me a few minutes.
Thank you. I'll move on to the next one while you're doing that. Can the meeting be advertised on the board outside?
I believe we do that currently now, Mr. Leduc.
Not sure if it's on today, but if we do that.
Yeah. It's a communication tool that we can make sure it's advertised. Madame Cameron Laflamme?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, so at section 4.2, it says the meeting's location. So unless extenuating circumstances dictates otherwise, and they refer to section 4.4, all meetings of the Council of the Township of Russell shall be held in the council chambers of the Township of Russell Municipal Office.
And what are the extenuating circumstances listed in 4.4?
Changes to meeting dates. In the event of extenuating emergency circumstances, the date, place, and time of any meeting may be changed by the mayor or by the majority vote of the members of council.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
D'autres questions? Non? Quelque chose d'autre? Councillor Tulowitzki?
I just venture to say that if we properly promote this, that it may be an extenuating circumstance if there's 300 people, 400 people that wanna be in here, I'm just saying that might be, and I understand the challenge Mr. Leduc said about the webcasting and everything else, but I don't know, as part of a process, maybe it's done in 2 stages or something like that, but I just wanna make sure that we, at the end of this process, that we've really opened the door to make sure that we're as transparent as possible, that we've gotten everyone a chance to say their piece, so that when we have to make a recommendation or decision that we feel comfortable that we have the best interest of the population as a whole, and of our township. Thank you.
Monsieur Leduc?
The member's gonna say, well, we think that getting 600 people in the room at the same time with different issues is not the right process. I think we want to bring council all the questions, the answers to the questions that were raised, and for information. And following that presentation with further direction, we will know how to break out in different areas, different priority projects. Maybe some people, it's not before 10, 15 years, it's a consideration. Maybe for some it's a 15 weeks issue. So who knows what, but we were just gonna, from your reaction and from your direction, know what to recommend regarding how do we go out and consult in sections, because we don't see it feasible, and there's so many questions out there that maybe per area, that to have everybody grouped in one room doesn't make sense to us.
Okay. Merci beaucoup. Okay, we'll move on to the next item. Item 19, public consultations hearings. We have none. Closed session, Madame Cameron Laflamme, si tu peux lire l'ajout.
Yes, so, Mr. Mayor, further to the amendments, so the motion would read, pursuant to sections 239(2), 3, and 3.1 of the Municipal Act 2001, SO 2001, Chapter 5, motion to move into closed session at the hour of 8:10 to address matters pertaining to section 239 of the Municipal Act 201 SO 2001, chapter 5, to consider matters relating to 1, proposed disposition of land in Embrun, and that's under section 2C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board.
Merci. So I need a mover and seconder to go into closed session, moved by Councillor Brisson, seconded by Councillor Tonoski. All those in favor? All those opposed? We are now closed session. Thank you very much. Have a good evening, everyone.